Hello. The title of my presentation is The History of the Opera Pagliacci. The source of my presentation is the pre-publication draft of the article titled The History by Andreas Giger, who is a professor of musicology at LSU. The composer of Pagliacci is Ruggero Leoncavallo. In the preface of the article, Professor Giger points out the fact that the history of Pagliacci is covered in mystery for three reasons. First, the archive of Leoncavallo's publisher, Sonanzo, was destroyed during bombing attacks in 1943. 120,000 plates and documents went up in smoke. During the bombing attacks, the opera house where the premiere had taken place 51 years earlier was partially destroyed. The theater was rebuilt, but the whereabouts of the sources once housed there is unknown. Secondly, Leoncavallo was already 34 years old when he began working on Pagliacci, and he had not yet made a name for himself as an opera composer. The lack of fame meant that no musical journal reported on the preparations of Pagliacci's premiere. Thirdly, Leoncavallo preferred working in private and was reluctant to talk publicly about his projects until they were well underway. Scholars have primarily relied on Leoncavallo's autobiographical recollections, the so-called Apante. Leoncavallo was so encouraged by the success of Mascagni's Cavalleria Rusticana a year and a half earlier that he immersed himself in his new project, at the time titled Pagliacci, drafting the libretto in less than 20 days. Leoncavallo claims to have based his libretto on a tragedy that had happened during his childhood. The originality of the libretto was questioned. It is possible that the primary inspiration for Pagliacci was Un giorno nuovo by Manuel Tamio Yebas, whose pen name was Jacqueline Estebanzi. Dryden has pursued the connection to some extent, claiming that Leoncavallo borrowed heavily from the play. In Uno Novo, Yorick, a comedian, persuades the head of his company, Shakespeare, to let him try his hand at the tragic role of the cheated husband in an upcoming play by a young, unnamed author. Alice, Yorick's wife, and Edmund, his adopted son, will play the part of the unfaithful wife and her lover. Walton knows that Alice and Edmund are in love offstage as well, decides to take revenge on Yorick by revealing to him the feelings of his wife and son during the play. He hands the cheated husband not the letter prepared by the lover of the play, but a letter previously taken from Alice by force, prepared by Edmund, conveying to Alice the details of their planned flight. Unable to separate his feelings from those of his character, Yorick kills Edmund on the open stage, causing Shakespeare to stop the play. The beginning of Pagliacci starts off with 4 clowns acting and dancing on stage. Then Cameo comes on stage and sings to the audience, letting them know that he is the prologue. He sets the stage, so to speak, explaining the plot before the beginning of the opera.
Signore, signori, scusatemi se da sol mi presento, io sono il prologo, poiché in scena ancor le antiche maschere mette l'autore, in parte vuol riprendere le vecchie usanze, e a voi di nuovo inviami. Ma non per dirvi come pria, le lacrime che noi versiam son false, degli spasimi e dei nostri martir, non allarmatevi. No, no, l'autore ha cercato invece fingervi uno squarcio di vita. Egli ha per massima sol che l'artista è un uomo, e che per gli uomini scrivere in neve, ed almeno ispirava sì. Un nido di memorie in fondo all'anima cantava un giorno, ed egli con vere lacrime scrisse nei singhiozzi, il tempo li battevano. Dunque, vedeti amar, siccome s'amano gli esseri umani, vedrete dell'odio i tristi frutti, del dolor gli spasimi, formi di rabbia breve e risacine. Piuttosto che le nostre povere gabbane di strioni, le nostre anime considerate, poiché si il concetto vi dissi, ora ascoltate come gli è svolto. Andiam, incominciate!
Composers through Verdi's generation would, after initial sketches, write the vocal parts and crucial instrumental ones, usually the bass line, into what would become the autographed full score. This stage of the document is commonly called skeleton score and would allow opera companies and publishers to extract vocal parts, giving singers a head start in preparing for the premiere. After the score had been returned to him, the composer would complete the orchestration by filling in the remaining instrumental parts. Leoncavallo most likely began with sketches as well, but then, like Puccini, first wrote the short score and finally, in a single step, the full score. The score was completed in 1892, presumably in preparation for a planned performance of Pagliacci at the Opera Comique. Muro approached Leoncavallo about the possibility of expanding the scene between Neda and Tonio. Leoncavallo responded in a letter on April 30th, 1899, rejecting Muro's requests because he felt the opera should be shortened, not lengthened, if it were to be modified at all. With the addition of the prologue, Pagliacci had reached about the length of Cavallare Rusticana, and Sonozzo, obsessed with brevity, began to be concerned. The issue of the Soritha does not appear to have come up again. The two-act format, and especially the length of the duet, however, became a bone of contention. Leoncavallo may have sought Sonozzo's input, but when he received it, had a hard time accepting it. In his argument for brevity, Sonozzo drew on some of the critical reviews as a point of departure. From the more or less malicious reviews spring a few well-founded remarks that support the observations I made when I heard the entire opera at the piano. That is, the character speaks a language and shows sentiments above their social position, and the work is too long to be given in a single act, whereas dividing it into two greatly diminishes the interest and the impression on the audience. It was a mistake to divide it into two, and it is necessary to restore it to one with cuts here and there, and especially in the last part, to render the catastrophic faster and less prepared. Today, in the theater, we must, above all, the brief, pressing, and fast. We must not leave the audience in time to desert, and especially to find things that are too long. That is, boring, as boredom begins where interest ends and the situation repeats itself. He stated, "Remember what I told you on the subject." You replied that at the rehearsals you would have noticed and, if necessary, shortened, but it seems to me that you have preserved everything. In conclusion, Professor Giger made mention of a number of operas in which Leoncavallo was accused of having taken the ideas for his libretto from. Leoncavallo states that it was based on his childhood experience and that everything that he wrote was his own. This concludes my presentation.